focus. Click the links for the alternative video platforms or to support the channel or the Discord. All right, this is funny because it's actually something I think I've said literally almost word for word. The concept of, gee, maybe women, if the only option is being a whore, maybe society has kind of gone down the wrong trousers of time and needs to go back to the fork and rethink itself. Maybe all these liberal policies aren't working out so well. This is welcome to the Blacklist universe. Mike Miller started it, but I think everyone is going to be there eventually. Or really, it's like if the Blacklist grows so large, it's like, well, it's not really a blacklist. It's just a whole separate industry. Like who's blacklisting whomst? So this is about that, and the weird thing of these people, these soy people, the people of soy who are just so happy to bend over for big daddy industry. And so they're explaining why being blacklisted is actually, why inflation is actually a good thing. Okay, Pete Buttigieg, please explain why inflation is a good thing, why ships are out in the Pacific just sitting there for months. Please explain how that worked out to our advantage. Anyway, this is about comicsgate, and some very, very crazy people on Twitter. You know, Zach might have been right about Twitter. It is a weird, weird environment. It's a weird environment because they seem to like fester in evil, and they get nothing done, and they spend a lot of time doing nothing, and at the end of it, like, you go, oh, what'd you do Saturday? Well, I spent 4 hours on Twitter. Like, even when you're getting, it's like it's a nice Saturday, or maybe it's not a nice Saturday, but there's a lot of other things you could be doing with your time on a Saturday. You could be watching Casablanca, you could be going for a walk in the rain, you could be doing a lot of other things. Oh, I spent 4 hours on Twitter. Oh, were you advertising something, or like, were you promoting? No, I was just fighting with Nazis on Twitter, or commies, get in focus. I was fighting with my ideological other. It's like, oh, real Nazis, real commies? No, just people who have slight disagreements with. So you spent 4 hours doing that on a Saturday. It's like, I can't help but notice that you got a little bit of a beer belly there. Maybe a little bit of exercise on a Saturday probably would have been a better use of your time. Really, it's like you have some rips in your clothes. It's like you could sew those clothes up. Really, anything would be a better use of your time than, and like you get into hour 2 or 3 of Twitter, and I used to be there a long time ago. And you realize, like, you just feel kind of gross and dirty, but you just want to finish up that fight. You just keep coming back to the fight. And after you realize, holy shit, what am I doing? This is insane. That's why it's usually better to just get kicked off of Twitter. The good thing about Gab is you can get your information there, but it's not so addictive because there's just not that many far left people there. Where it's like 1%. It's so easy to block them that, like, yeah, it's a little bit of an echo chamber, but it's also not addictive. Like, you're on Gab for 20 minutes a day as opposed to an hour a day, or probably even less. Anyway, so a lot of people, some are around comicsgate in the YouTube environment, and I won't name their names, are arguing back and forth about things like sales and comics shipped versus comics sold. I won't mention her name. Retail stores closing, all this kind of stuff, salaries getting cut, work drying up. And actually, now that I mention all those things, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of evidence to say that things aren't going so well. But the thing is, before you even argue that issue, take a look at the stories themselves. go sailing for them. It's basically alt-left Antifa comics, anti-white misandry. Even without looking at the numbers, you can look at the comics, and it's like, it'd be like looking at a Lotta from the 70s or something. You go like, yeah, I know there's not a lot of it. Like, you got an Italian Fiat, and then you have a Russian Lotta, and you go, yeah, there's not a whole lot of excitement for the Lotta, because even a Ford Pinto at the time was a lot better built than a Russian Lotta, or I don't know if they built them in Russia, built them in the Ukraine or something. Anyway, I'm saying, like, you can flip through these comics. You can go flip through, spend your Saturday and flip through like 20 comics. You go, this sucks. There's no way there's a very limited audience every year. Like, collectors are buying it for the paper copies. I mean, go read for yourself. The best proof is like you could do comic reviews, and it would just be absolute crap comic reviews. You could do a fresh comic review every day, and you'd never run out of material. The old stuff, now that's a whole different story. Give me some graphic novels from like pre-90. Absolutely. Mid 80s Batman. I think that was 86 was they peaked out with I forget what it's called. The 86 Batman stories were amazing. But anything modern, it's like, it might be useful in a garden, but I can't really wrap my head around people who are voluntarily paying for and reading modern SJW comics. And I don't believe for an instant that these developmentally disabled comics are actually selling. But if they are, hey, great, good for you. It's kind of a moot point. If you enjoy the graphic novel format and you love yourself and you know how awesome you are, or at least you don't hate yourself because you have a penis or you're from Europe, then you have a lot of comicsgate to choose from. You've got experienced pros. There's a fair amount of pros in comicsgate now. And you've got amateurs who are doing their first comic. So you have a lot of options with comicsgate. And I mean different genres also. DC blacklisting comicsgate doesn't mean much. If DC is only hiring people part-time, well, what are these guys supposed to do? Why would you punish somebody if they wanted to work on their own IP? If DC's only hiring them so many months a year, it's like, okay, I've got time to work on my own IP. It's like I need to go to comicsgate to help publish it. Why would you punish that? But that's not even the issue so much. The issue is that these alt-left commie kids are gladly cheering on these billion-dollar soulless corporate whores because comicsgate is run by a bunch of Nazis who are planning on bringing back the Fourth Reich, or at least that is the straw man that they tell themselves to justify their really reprehensible behavior. Like, these are the most petty, malicious, evil people, and they don't even know why they're being petty. They cheer on DC Blacklist. Mike Miller's got a channel called Blacklist Universe, in case you don't get the reference. And he's a Christian who basically is persona non grata in the mainstream comics because he's a Christian. So they cheer on DC blacklisting people for talking to EVS. That's the Twitter kids say that they shouldn't talk to EVS or anyone in Comicsgate if they want to sell their comics. They should get on like these Drink and Draw. That's one channel on YouTube. And there's a bunch of other small channels. Drink and Draw has 7,500 subs and they have 30 people in a live stream. And there are other channels that I've gone to these channels and I've been the only person in the live stream. And the guy's got like 4,000 subs. And you want to go take your independent comic to these places and try to sell it there when you're going to get, oh, hey, you got 900 views. Well, you're not going to, if you're relying on them to sell your comic, you may as well not bother. You just go do something else because it's never going to happen. I'm saying Comicsgate is a network that's already established. It is what it is. They call Comicsgate a, quote, known hate group. Well known by whom? A bunch of soy boy pussies who probably pay to sniff panties. And who exactly in Comicsgate is the hatred part of the hate group? People in Comicsgate might be assholes, but that doesn't make them a hate group, especially if they're assholes to just everyone. But really, you can't win an argument where people are arguing from emotion. These kids don't know who they're canceling. They just know it's a right versus left issue. They have no idea who Aaron Lopresti or R.T. Bear or John Malin are. They just know that these guys aren't SJWs, so they must be destroyed. How dare they not, work 3 months a year for the mainstream comics and then, work at Target? The rest of what are they supposed to do? Their job is to make comics, so they're going to go to the network that's established. And let me draw a parallel between what is going on with the Wu Flu. I've seen a few of these Antifa marches where they say, one, that they're Antifa, but two, that the government needs to force you to cover your face and take an experimental treatment. So the anti-fascists want the government to do something to you against your will, but they're the anti-fascists, but they want big government to compel behavior of something that the individual objects to for whatever reason. I was always the first to correct people when they called Antifa Nazi fash. I went into detail about Moses Mordecai Levy and the rest of those characters, the history of the Bolsheviks, and the modern examples of Soros and Rothschilds. And you think about it, it's like, you think modern, it's like World War II, it really wasn't that long ago. Antifa was actually the useful idiots of the globalist puppet masters, but at their heart, they were communists of the international variety and anarchists, but mostly they're cannon fodder, useful idiots. And to be fair, we have our own megatarded normies on our side also, but we're red-pilling them every day on Gab. So these Antifa kids are just authoritarians at heart, but also a weirdly submissive variety. That flashing is going to give Eichenwald a seizure. Let's get past that. They're this weirdly authoritarian, like submissive variety, because they want the government to oppress liberty. But these kids also are willing to suffer. Then for some reason they trust daddy government or DC and Marvel so much that they're willing to be the useful idiots of big government or billion-dollar corporations. It's like the left has been subverted by parasites over the past 20 years. They're gladly raging for the machine. How do you occupy Wall Street when your handlers are paid by the Bank of America? There are videos of BLM and Antifa walking through residential suburbs last year, destroying the place for Black Lives Mattering by going through the residential. Doesn't it seem odd that they don't march outside the mayor, the governor, district attorney, city council homes? They never actually spoke truth to power. They just did nothing. They just wasted police time and woke up people and destroyed residential neighborhoods. They never actually accomplished anything for years on end. How does marching through a middle-class Asian neighborhood... I remember one of the videos, an Asian guy comes out, and he's got his black husband inside, and he's looking at these BLM people, and he's like, well, why are you coming through a residential neighborhood, shining lights on people's houses, saying, like, out of your houses into the streets? But, like, you're in a residential neighborhood where people, other POCs are also sleeping. And he comes out and is like, what are you doing? And there's very little self-awareness in BLM and Antifa. How does that help BLM and Antifa accomplish their goals? And this relates to comicsgate because it's the same pointless energy. They support DC and Marvel, who admittedly treat their artists like garbage. But then if they try to go indie, it's got to meet with the SJW's approval, even though they're mostly pirating comics anyway. Very few people are paying for stuff nowadays. If it's going to be digital, why would you pay for it? Back in my day, the left would support an indie movement, or at least if the movement might have been a little bit too edgy as it was back then, they would at least stay out of the way, because the left used to support the little guy against the Luciferian corporate NGO. A 2000-era liberal would not understand a 2021 liberal. So hold on a sec. You guys are supporting DC, Marvel, Bank of America, the federal government over a small group of indie guys. Well, yes, because this small group is all a bunch of Nazis. So these 50-year-old fat, bald Viagra guys who can't touch their toes are Nazis. Yeah, you see, you don't understand. Myers and Van Sciver are literally Hitler. And when you explain it out loud, it just sounds like the ramblings of an insane person, because we're talking about boomer comics, a bunch of guys who remember when the art form was at its best. And yes, in my opinion, diversity is cancer, and inclusion is AIDS, and equity means you reward talentless people because they have tan skin or a vagina. They literally have the acronym DIE, diversity, inclusion, and equity. And some scientist, a physicist, geophysicist, was going to a lecture in something. And because he wrote a paper saying, oh, we should be focusing on something else, it was merit-based. Equality, merit, and something else instead of die. It's like, oh, you can't come to the physics lecture. But he's literally saying people should be judged on merit. Yeah, you're not welcome at the geophysical research anymore. Well, that's insane. You're going to get, if you're not working on merit, you're going to get people who are going to do bad science. And if you get people who do bad science, then you may as well not do science. Well, that's where we are. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys all next episode.